I'm not a tax professional. I'm not a CPA. So sometimes whenever you guys start asking me like tax related questions, I get a little nervous, but I'm like, I can teach you how to track it in QuickBooks. So I might as well. So if there's like tax related questions, if you happen to ask that kind of thing, I'm going to relate you back to, or like share with you to go back to your CPA, tax professional, whoever you use. But I'm going to teach you how to do some tracking within QuickBooks that I feel is some options for you. Sound good? What is it? What is this under on Facebook? Just Candus Kampfer, facebook.com/Candus Kampfer. That's my Facebook page if you haven't found me there, which I highly recommend. Follow me on Facebook or Instagram. You'll hear from me more often. I do extra little training or inspirations if you want to check it out. Okay, Instagram, it's Candus.Kampfer. Okay, so let's pull a thought of the day. We're going to use our Life Loves You deck because I can't do a training without that. And that'll give some of you who are coming on a little later a chance to join. All right, so what are we meant to hear today? Let's see. You never join me like live. I always do a thought of the day. Life Loves Me is today's card. It's like a little person enjoying some grass and some grounding. Life loves us all. Look at yourself in the mirror, breathe in and say, life loves me. As you breathe in and out, smile and repeat 10 times. Now you might say, what does this have to do with QuickBooks? If you've like never been to one of my classes, it has nothing to do with QuickBooks. It just has to do with, I like to set an intention, which is we're going to have fun. And as I said before, we're all going to give me a little grace because I don't do taxes, but I wanted to teach you guys this. I wanted to support you in figuring out the PPP loans. Okay, so let's jump right in. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so we're going to start from the beginning. This is how it's going to work. I'm going to show you. Let's just do it. I'm going to share with you. I have my little Facebook just to make sure. I'm going to show you the online version and the desktop version. To be totally transparent, I don't have the payroll functionality in the sample file that I have for QuickBooks. So I won't be showing the payroll, a little technique that I'm going to share with you on the desktop, but the same thing applies. I'll walk you through it. So let's start with the desktop version. So I want to start with teaching you what I want the end report to be, what I want to have you create, and then we'll go through and actually I'll like walk you step by step on how I actually got to this point. How does that sound? Sound good? All right, so the PPP, or the Payroll Protection Program, as I said, I'm not a tax professional. I didn't read the law. I'm just going based off what I've heard, okay, what I know so far, which is you can get your funding for 8 weeks from the moment your loan starts, and you need to use that loan to have as the forgiven part of it, 75% for payroll, and then you can use the other 25% for the other things that are allotted. If you don't know what those are, I'm not specialized in that to tell you, but I will show you examples today of utilities and rent, okay? And there are two main ways to track it. One is using the classes feature in QuickBooks, and the other is setting up more like a sub bank account, okay? Those are the two that I found the best. And my preferred method, if you're not already using what I call classes, which is this here, this method, which is my favorite, you can pull a report and you're going to be able to see exactly what you paid for with the PPP loan, okay? And then you can look at like total, everything going on that you've paid for, or just what you've paid by a class, and anything that's not encompassed in the PPP part, you don't use the class for, and it will track it separate, but you'll still be able to pull a normal profit and loss. Everything is still the same. It doesn't impact your traditional bank account. It's the easiest. Now, some people are saying, I don't want to go out, Candus, and I don't want to open a whole brand new bank account. And I totally get that. So by creating a sub account, you don't create a whole brand new bank account, but it is a way to track it. So for summary, I'm going to show you two techniques. One is to use what I call classes. It's my preferred method. If, this is like a little asterisk, you're not already using classes in another way in your business. So if you use like rentals, or you have multiple locations, or you're using classes already, you can only choose one class per transaction. So the class feature won't work for you. So you also need a backup option, which is going to be using the banking, setting up a sub account as a bank account. Yeah, so one of our people that are live are like, I was going to use the classes feature. You taught me that. Thank you so much. So that's awesome. But let's walk through like, how do you do it? So I'm going to show you again two techniques. One is if you aren't currently using classes, how to use the class for this. It's like the cleanest, in my opinion, the easiest way to do it. I saw some people teaching to do like a lot of sub classes. It's not necessary, in my opinion. I'm only giving you my opinion, okay? So if you found another technique, you think another way's better, totally great. This is just my perspective, okay? Then the other technique is going to be using a sub bank account where you can pull a report that looks like this. It doesn't categorize it the same as a profit and loss for each type of expense, but it still will track where the money was spent. So you can pull a report and give it to them, and it's transaction by account. Okay. If you have questions, you can pop them in, but how about you guys let me go through the whole training and kind of just stay present. And then if you have questions, I'll look at those kind of as we go, but I want to stay focused because I want to make sure that we get this as clear and concise as possible for those of you who are also watching the replay and wanting to go back and do what I taught. Okay. So this is the end result. I'm going to open up the 2020 version. The other was 2019. It looks pretty much identical for desktop, and we'll walk through it. And then afterwards, I will show you on the online how to set up the same accounts. Okay, so the first step, don't try to jump into tracking expenses before you've tracked depositing the money in your QuickBooks. Because as far as I know, the PPP, like what you can write off, doesn't start until the day you're funded. Okay, so you have 8 weeks from the day you're funded. All that will be on your paperwork. Okay, so you're going to go up to lists. This is the first step. The first step, step one, is to set up the loan that you received in your QuickBooks chart of accounts. Okay, so list, chart of accounts. I know there's a lot of different opinions on this. My perspective, I've been getting asked from you guys, have been messaging me in different ways. What type of account do I create? Do I create it as a line of credit? Do I create it as a long-term? Do I create it as a current liability? Since we don't know exactly how the loan's going to be forgiven, and there is something to be said about a 2-year term to pay it back, then we would like to create it as a long-term liability because we may not be paying it all back. Now, it may be totally forgiven, so you might not owe any, but we don't really know all those facts. So based off that, we know that if you do owe any money, that you have 2 years to pay it back, then I would set it up as a long-term liability. So list, chart of accounts for desktop users, then go down to account and new, okay? I would set it up as a long-term loan and click continue. So this is gonna be PPP loan or whatever you wanna call it. I don't think that the terms are as important as that you just get it set up and know that everything in QuickBooks is always changeable, movable. If you've been around me for long, you know I always say that. All right, so second note, I don't teach you to track your own tax mapping because in my perspective, it is a huge benefit to have a tax professional who helps you with your finances and your tax stuff, okay? So I'm not going to give you like tax line mapping, and with everything going on and the forgiveness and how to do it all and all the calculations, I'd highly recommend, especially this year, that you do look into getting somebody you really like working with as a tax professional. Okay. We're not going to do like an opening balance or anything on that. We're going to actually deposit the money into the bank account. Okay. So first you set up your loan. Next, we're going to go and you're going to make a deposit. You can do it through make a deposit. You can do it through the check register. Everything it's all the same. So go banking, make deposit. If you're a home screen person, you click record deposit. It all goes to the same place. Now, if you're going to use the class method, then you don't need to create a sub account for a PPP funds for a bank account. Okay. If you're going to use the class method, I will show you both. Okay. Sound good? How are you guys doing so far? So you're going to deposit it into whatever account you actually deposit it. If you're using the class method, you can do both. So you could always have like if you're like, I kind of want to like cross-reference and triple check and it makes me feel better if I have a place that tracks both, like you like both, you can do that. So if you want, you can set up a PPP bank account as well. All right, so the day you get your deposit is going to be the day you get funded. Let's just do this out to like the 15th. The from account is going to be a vendor. You're going to set up as a vendor. It's going to be the bank that you got your PPP loan with. Okay, you can title it whatever you want. PPP loan, and then the vendor's name of the bank, or just the bank that you got it at, okay? I'm just gonna do bank for simplicity. I'm gonna do a quick add. I'm gonna do it as a vendor because we know that vendors are the people and places you spend money. If you're brand new to QuickBooks, that's something to note. Customers are who pay you. Employees are W-2. Other, we're not going to worry about that. Okay. Now we're going to choose the account we just created. So we just created that PPP loan. So we're going to pick that. And then here you can put in memo like funded, on, date, whatever tracking information you want, you could put in the memo. And then you're going to select your class. So I haven't showed you how to set up classes yet. So you can leave. The way the classes work is normally mainly shows up on the profit and loss. And since this account is a liability, which is a balance sheet account, it's okay if you don't add the class. You can always come back and add it later if it's not even a feature because you haven't set it up yet. Make sense? So let's say that the loan was $80,000. Then we're going to click Save and Close. So now if we went to look at our reports, our balance sheet, which is reports, company financial, balance sheet. So all we've done so far is just got our loan funded. Okay. We're going to go out to the 15th. So it shows what we want to see. Our bank account has now increased. And if we scroll down, I have other things in here because it's my QuickBooks training, my Confidence with QuickBooks training file that I do all kinds of stuff for you guys with. So there is your PPP loan. It's been entered. Okay. Then the second step is I would set up my classes. If you haven't set them up, you're going to go under Edit Preferences. You're going to go up to Accounting, Company Preferences. Now, you do have to be an admin to be able to set this part up. So if you're doing bookkeeping for someone else, you don't have admin rights. Because it's a company preference, you're going to need to make sure you work together on this. Then you're going to want to choose right here where it says Class Tracking. And you can choose whether or not you want to add where it prompts you after every transaction. I wouldn't do that since it's not a normal way you're using your classes. Now, if you're using classes for rentals or something else, which I've created other videos on, then we prompt it because it's for every transaction and we really want to use it. But in this special case, you don't need to. It's totally up to you. Okay, it just reminds you as you're entering. So now you've set up the feature for your classes. Edit Preferences, Accounting. Now you can start tracking your class. The next step is to actually set the classes up. So you go under List, Class List, and I've already created it. But if I hadn't, you go up down here to Class, New, and you type it in here, PPP Loan, or whatever you want to call it. If you just want to call it PPP, PPP Tracking, like everything is changeable, fixable. Don't worry so much about that part, okay? So then you're going to click, you set it up, you click OK, and now you have your class set up. You probably don't have any other classes in here because I said this is only really used if you're not already using classes, ideally, because you can only pick one class per transaction, okay? So now we're going to go in and we're going to start paying our expenses. We're in our 8-week window and we can start tracking how we spend the money we received. Okay. So what you can do is when you write your checks or you enter your bill, anything that you do. So if you're going to be entering a bill, you would enter it like you normally do, but you're going to be having like a class over here called PPP. Okay. So one thing to be really careful of is that the bills are accrual basis and you want to make sure you're actually paying it during the window time frame. So it's going to be based off what's paid. So just be careful the difference between a cash and accrual basis, that you're paying the bills during that 8-week window, not just entering the date during it. Does that make sense? You can let me know in the chat if you're here live. Okay, so let's do it like we're writing a check. You can do it either way. You're going to pick your bank account that you normally pay for it with, and you're going to enter it in here. So we'll just enter in like rent. It would be normally the person's name. So however you normally pay your rent, I'm not teaching you like the very basics of how to set up QuickBooks. It's more just this part. So you would have your normal vendor. I'm just going to set them up as rent. Let's just say your rent was $1,000. Then you're going to come over here and you're going to add rent expense, the key. So the main part of the check is going to be like you normally do it. Where the trick is making sure you select the class, PPP loan. And when you save and close it, now when you pull your report for tracking the expenses, let me actually go one step back. There's two types of profit and loss. There's the standard or there's classes. because we're doing the PPP loan class, we're going to check it on class if we just want to see what's been applied to that. Then we're going to go to just this month, and we're going to see our PPP loan. Okay. If you have other stuff going on, you'll see it will say, let me show you what it said before. This is from other training I've done. It would have, if you've used class, this is how we use classes in general by like property. What it will say for you is if you enter anything else that's not related to PPP, it will say unclassified, which just means it's not under the PPP area. Does that make sense? Okay. So what your report will look like in the future, I'm just going to go under filters so I can show you something. If you ever just want to see only what's on the PPP and you show both, and when you're ready to start showing where you spent the money, you can go under customize your report, go under filters, and you can go down to classes and you can choose just the PPP class and it will only show that for you once you start entering other transactions. This may not make sense, but if you watch this again when you need it, it will be more clear to you how to track so that you can pull a report just based off that one class. Then what you can do, this gets a little trickier if you want to customize your reports, but you can make it where instead of it be by class, it's just by total. So it makes it only one column instead of two, the PPP plus the total. And then you can also customize your report. Go under header and footer. This is like some extra just information for you, but it's PPP loan tracking or something like that. You can change the title of the report. Okay. So you can do that if you want to be able to track that. You can always memorize it so you can pull it easily. Okay. That's the first step on how to set up so we've recorded the loan. We've set up the classes. And now we are going to go in and I'm going to show you how to do, so you can do your utility bill, you can do your rent the exact same way where you're picking the class, okay? Then I'm going to show you why I prefer classes for paying your employees. So I'm going to do a fake payroll. I'll show you. You're going to come in here and you're going to process your payroll. So you're going to process it like normal. We'll do this one here. So you just go in like you're going to process it. I'm not teaching you how to process it, just the PPP side of it. I would open up your paycheck and you're going to have your employee's data in here. So let's say that he worked 40, let's do 80 hours just for information purposes. And we're going to open that up and there's going to be 80 hours. The key to this working, so we're either going to do a bank account or we're going to do a class. I prefer classes because of the way it shows up on the profit and loss and it doesn't impact your bank account. So here you would go over to class and you're going to choose the PPP loan class. Now it's going to move, you can still like do your job costing, all that, it's not going to impact that, but what it'll just move it on the profit and loss over to that class. Okay. Then you're going to click save and close. I'm going to take this one off because I'm only going to process this one for this example. And then I'm going to click continue. And I'm going to create the paycheck. Now, right here, if you're choosing to do the PPP bank account for funds because you can't use classes, you can change your bank account here, which we'll talk about later. Okay, so we're not even going to worry about the paycheck. Now let's see what does the profit and loss look like for the PPP. So we'll just do for today. Oh, let me go out to the 31st. Just do it for this month. That'd be easier. Okay. So what you'll see is now for the PPP, you have not only your rent, now you have your payroll. Now, the PPP doesn't necessarily cover absolutely all areas. I don't think that there's a defined exactly, I don't know. Let me speak this way. I don't 100% know which fees it covers and not. I know that it helps with like state unemployment tax, things like that, but not necessarily for like federal, like some of your other taxes, like Social Security, that kind of thing that the employer pays. Now remember, what shows up on the profit and loss is the employer side, not the employee side, okay? So this has your gross wages and then some of your extra taxes. There is no perfect way, I'm going to be 100% transparent with you. There is no perfect way in QuickBooks to be like, I want you to put PPP here and not there. So what you're going to do is you're going to need to start pulling an additional report. but this is going to give you majority of what you need. Okay. You could choose not to do any of this and then just like track it separate on an Excel spreadsheet, which I saw a video that I will link that I really liked where a gentleman had created an Excel spreadsheet. So you can do that too. I thought that was really helpful what he created. What you can do if you're wanting more specific, like I want to know exactly what we paid those employees, because you're going to need this level of detail too. So the profit and loss by class is like one way to track it. You're also going to want to pull your payroll by summary report. And you're going to want to give them for the period of 8 weeks that you have, like how much you paid the employees. This will give you your gross wages. And then down here will give you your employer taxes. So you'll want this report as well to pick the specific taxes that it encompasses that you can actually use for the funding. Okay. But I thought about like setting up like expense accounts and moving stuff, but the level of how you'd have to change your payroll items to be able to point to specific things was just too much. This is a workaround and the simplest that I could give you. Okay. Because I'm always about like, what's the simplest, easiest way? Is it gross wages? Yeah. So they're sharing in here, it's gross wages, SUTA, and employer portion of Medi-Cal insurance. I like that format. Yeah. So PPP doesn't cover the 941. You can check with your tax professional, but it doesn't cover everything. Just so you know. That's what from the research I've done, it doesn't cover absolutely everything. First payroll went out 2 weeks from the date funded. So you can talk to your tax professional. I'm pretty sure that based off payroll, it's going to be when you pay the payroll, not when the employees worked. So it's going to be on the date that once your funding happens, the payroll you pay during that funded period of time. Okay. Let's see. Yeah. So the health insurance that will show up on here. Thank you. You're welcome. For employees that make over 100,000, does it make sense to split the salary? I can't speak to that because I don't know. I think there's a lot of not a lot of clarity around how to do it. I believe how it works for employees that exceed over 100,000, you're only just going to get the percentage that qualifies, right? So the 12 months, anything that exceeds times 2.5, and there's a calculation that you can do. Okay. I don't want to get into all of that because that is beyond my level of the level I want to feel responsible for to explain to you. That's transparency. That's hesitant why I even thought about waiting to teach this training, because I'm like, there's so many nuances about what's going to be written off and so many things we don't even know yet. Okay. So let me keep going. I see you guys are just like, what about the disaster loans? And that, okay, we'll talk about that in a little bit. I just want to keep moving forward with, I just want to keep moving forward with the training side of it, because I know you guys have tons and tons of questions, which we'll get to. I'll do my best, but you have to remember, I'm not a tax professional, right? That's what makes me unique, and that's what makes me able to teach it to you guys in a simplistic way. But I don't. What's the word? I'm not a substitute for talking to your tax professional to get guidance. That's what I would say for your situation. Okay, so this is an extra report that you can pull that will help you. This is one way that you can start tracking your PPP loan to start helping you know where you spent your money, because you're going to have to prove where you spent it. So I wanted to create ways for you to track that. Okay. So this is one way. All right. The secondary way that I want to show you is the bank account side of it. Okay. So let me real quick for the online users. Actually, I'll wait and do online, but let me just click it. Otherwise it'll probably kick me out if I don't keep. You have to like click it every now and then or it gets a little temperamental. Okay, so remember in the beginning, I showed you this QuickBooks file where we have the profit and loss method or just the detail method. I'm going to show you how to do the detail method now. Okay, so the secondary style that you can do is under list, chart of accounts, and we've already set up our PPP loan, but I'll show you an additional way that you can do it. So you're going to go down to accounts, new, and you're going to create a sub bank account to track it. And the reason I did this is because it's the easiest way to kind of like split it out and see it in a transaction report. So it's PPP. I just called it like funds, like bank account funds. You can call it whatever you want. I just decided to call it PPP funds. And you want to make it a sub account of your main bank account. Okay. And this is just going to be another way for you to kind of see where the funds go, how you spent them. Now I'm going to go back down to the loan. If you were just going to use this method, you're going to start from the beginning. You're going to add a bank account. You want to do that first. Then you're going to go down. You're going to add your loan like I showed prior. I mean, you can do it in any order you want, but you're going to add your loan. And when you go to do your deposit, in this example, you're actually going to do it under PPP funds instead of the regular checking account. If you want to do this, you can do both if you want. You can have classes and this and have both reports if you want to. Totally up to you. This system works better if you already are using classes in a different way or you don't want to do classes. Okay, so I will click save and close and yes. Okay, so now the funds are sitting in my sub account. So I can see how much up here I have in the actual funds. This is the loan amount. It's going to stay there till you figure out how much you're forgiven, and then you're going to forgive it. But right now we're just tracking where we spend the money. Okay, so when you write the checks, for example, for rent, instead of writing them out of your main account, you would write them out of your sub account. And if you don't want to use classes, you just wouldn't have that feature turned on. And when you hit save and close, I'm going to do that for the rent. I'm also going to do it for the payroll check. So when you process your payroll, or if you've already processed your payroll, you can move your funds over to the fund account. You can still reconcile your bank account because it'll still show transactions in the reconciliation, but I prefer, so when something's a sub account, you'll see you'll just have these transactions. So you have your original deposit and then how you spend your money. Okay, so if you've already processed your payroll, but now you're seeing this video and you want to go back and you're wanting this level of detail, you can do it. Okay, you'll see that it still is showing in the regular checking account as well. And that's because it's a sub account of the main account, which will still allow you to reconcile it, okay, on the desktop version. So when you pull this report, if you don't want to do the class tracking, you can pull what's called, let me find it here for you. It's called transaction detail by account. So you go reports, accounting, and taxes, transaction detail by account. And then you come up to customize your report. So if we said this month, it's going to have anything that happened, but you don't want anything. You only want what happened in that PPP. So this is a workaround. You're going to go up, you're going to click customize report, filters, and you're going to choose an account. And the account you're going to choose, you're going to click multiple accounts, even though you're only picking one. You're going to pick the PPP loan and click OK, and it's only going to show you everything that happened in that one bank account. Okay? So that's the secondary way that you can choose to track them. And it's totally up to you. If you, I thought I still had the other report open. If you want to do it by class and you prefer to see like the columns where it shows like the types of expenses, or you can do both if you like that level of detail. It's totally up to you, or you can just choose the checking account if you want. Don't forget, you're still going to, with payroll, want to pull your payroll summary report for the weeks that you paid your employees. So the thing you got to remember is payroll, when you report on the 941 or any of your reporting, it's always based off the day you pay your employees. So you're going to want to pull it. This data is going to pull based off the date you paid them, not the dates they worked. Okay. So it's when the money's exchanged. Okay. What are you guys, let me know below. Are you going to be using the bank account method or the class method, or none of these methods and you have a preferred different method? You can let me know. Can you add classes at any time? Yes. If you've already added transactions that need to be tagged with a new class, can you just go back and open them? Yes, just like I changed the bank account, you can change, so you can set up your class and then you can go back and you can change it over. So let's look, I have an employee. That's why I decided to do this training live, where I usually pre-record all my trainings. I was like, in case you guys have questions that I'm not thinking of. So if this was like a prior paycheck, you can open up your check detail and add classes. Yes. Okay. So you can do that. And you can also open up your previous checks that you wrote for that period of time and change them as well if you weren't using this and you like this method. Yes, I'm going to show the classes method for online now. I may use both methods. I kind of like both methods because it gives you different reporting, but it's totally up to you. Okay, Donna said I already used the class method, so I'm going to use the banking. Did this help you guys with like how to track it, how to set it up? Are you glad, like, did it help you? I'm kind of curious. Okay, give me a second. I'm going to show the online and then I'll go back to some of your questions. Okay, so if you're an online user, there is a disclaimer with the class method. You need to be on QuickBooks. You know how QuickBooks has like QuickBooks pricing and you have different levels of what you pay for? The desktop version, you get classes. Everybody has classes if you have desktop. But for online users, I'm pretty sure you need to be at least at the plus level of online to be able to use the class method, okay? Otherwise, you can use the banking method either way. So under the wheel, if you want to set up classes and you're not using them and you're at that level, you can go under accounting and settings, advanced, and then you're going to go down to categories. You're going to click on the pencil. You can choose to track classes and you can choose to do one class per row or one class per entire transaction. I normally do it by row in case you pay for something that goes to more than one place, and then you'll save it. Close that, and then you're going to have to set up your lists just like the desktop users. To do that, you're going to go under all lists and you're going to see classes. And I already set one up for you, but you would go new and you type in PPP loan or whatever you want to do, add there. And if you ever want to change it, you do the little arrow and you can click edit. So I could do like, PPP loan. This is for the online users. Okay. And then when you're writing your expenses, whether you're downloading the bank feed, once you've turned it on, it's going to have your class setting right here. And you're going to pick that. Okay. So if you enter in bills or any of those things, you can use them there. Just remember, you want to pay them during this period of time. Don't just enter a bill, pay it. Let me go to the bank feed for those of you who use the bank feed method. When you're entering in your transactions, there'll be a class right here. So if you're like, I want to put this under whatever let's do an expense. Money spent. So we'll say this is for rent. Okay. So we'll just add rent as a vendor. And then here we'll do rent. Ooh, hello, my fingers. Rent. Then you're going to want to add your class as the PPP loan for it to show up on the profit and loss. Okay, so that's how you would add that. Then if you go over to reports, you're going to do a profit and loss by class, which you're going to see right here. And you'll see PPP loan. And then if you don't have anything, so we're going to want to do this month so we can keep it clean. So we don't have to look at everything else. You'll see your money right here and it says PPP, and then it says not specified. If you only want to see what's on the PPP, just like I showed on desktop, you would customize, go down to filters, go down to classes, go down to the PPP, and run your report, and then it will just show that. Whether you're cash or accrual basis, you can change that, and then it will just give you during that period of time that you paid the money what you had. Okay. You could talk to your tax professionals about cash versus accrual and how it's going to work for the loan. Do you have to actually spend the money? I'm pretty sure you do. So make sure that you're pulling your report on cash basis because that's when the money is actually spent during those weeks, the dates that you have to pull. Okay. And then here, once you've decided to pull it by that class, you can also do your columns by total only, and it will shrink it down so you have everything in the PPP. If you want to edit it, you can click on your little pencil. And then you could change this to say PPP loan details or transactions or like whatever you want to call it. And then it will change the title of it instead of saying profit and loss. Okay. So that's how you can do yours. You can also set up a bank account. Instead of trying to add a bank account, you'd be better off to go under the chart of accounts, whichever way you want to get there, and add a PPP funds account. If you want to use a checking account, if you don't have the class method and you want to enter your transactions that way, you can do it. Now, what's kind of tricky about the online that the desktop feature doesn't have is in the desktop feature, when you make a sub account, it still kind of shows up in the main account. The transaction still shows up. For example, We'll add the rent again. We'll do the rent class. We'll just do this as 1,000. Rent as the expense. You'll see the money comes out. When you're looking here, it doesn't give you the same, it doesn't make the sub account at the same level. So that's a little bit tricky. But what you could do, I mean, you just have to decide if this is the way you want to track it. This is also why I prefer the class method, because class, you can pull a profit and loss. But with the online, I found that the sub account didn't work quite as well, but you can do it. And you could still pull the report that way. The other option that you could do, another option that you could do is if you prefer to, instead of you keep everything at the main checking account level, you can do what they call transfers. So everything stays at the main checking account level, and then you just transfer transactions from the main checking account to the sub account so that you can also track the funding. I just don't love that as much. It is an option. I just don't love it. So I'm not probably going to, I don't even want to complicate it by trying to teach you that. But this is how you would do it for the online. I wanted to show you how to do the payroll, but my sample file of the online doesn't have where I can actually process payroll to show you. It has them there, but it doesn't, I can't actually process it. So hopefully you'll see, just like I showed you in the desktop version of the class, you'll see the exact, I know you'll see it there, I just can't show you an example of it. Sorry about that. Okay, so any questions so far? Oh, one thing that I saw that was asked had to do with the economic injury disaster loan, or the EIDL. How do we handle that? Right now, it depends if the loan is going to be a grant or not. And I'm not sure if you could get like, you could do, they had a certain amount, you got like 10,000 or 1,000 depending on how many employees and all this stuff. I've seen that people say, yes, it's 100% a grant. And I've also seen people say, well, it's not 100% clear. I can't speak to that because, as I said, that's not really my zone of genius. But if you're going to set up the loan, you would set the loan up the same way. If it's 100% a grant, or once these loans are forgiven, what you can do is you're going to set up list chart of accounts. You're going to go down here and you're going to set up a new account. And you're going to set up an account for the forgiveness. Okay, so if later down the road your PPP loan is forgiven, or if you got the extra funding for the disaster funding, you can create an other account that's other income. Okay, and this is going to be where you can basically write off the loan that was forgiven, the part of the loan that was forgiven, or if the whole thing's forgiven, depending on what it is, you can create this here. So if it's for the PPP, you could do like PPP loan forgiveness. You want to make sure that you're always giving like very clear, I made myself little notes. I'm just looking at my notes. You want to give yourself really clear, like, what is it? Okay, so if it's for the PPP loan, I figure we might as well talk about this now. You can click save and close. You can have an other income account. Now it is not going to be necessarily taxable income, but you still need to track it. So let's just say that you got $20,000 of your loan forgiven. Maybe you get the whole amount, but we don't know that yet. You can go into the loan once you find out what's forgiven. Let's just say December, or maybe like, I don't know, July 31st. You find out that some of your loan is forgiven based off what you qualify for, how you use the funding. And $20,000 it was what was forgiven. You're going to decrease it by that amount. And then you're going to put it to the other income account for the PPP loan forgiveness. And you could put in all the details and everything else you need. But that's what you're basically going to do. It's going to lower the balance, and it will move that transaction down to the forgiveness account down here, so that your CPA, tax professional, or if you do your own taxes or you do your client's taxes, you have a way to track on the profit and loss. So if we go through July, you'll see you'll have your different kinds of expenses, and then you have your forgiveness. Okay, and you can always do it by class if you want, PPP loan forgiveness kind of stuff. Okay, that would be pretty cool actually, to add the class to that, and then you'd have it all on the same. You can go under splits, and I'd add the class, the PPP for great tracking. That's how I do it. And then, yeah, then you'd have that in your profit and loss. And you could customize that to just be that one class too. If you want, like if you have other transactions, you choose the PPP and then you hit refresh and it would just have everything under just the PPP and everything else would go away. Okay. Let's see. It might end up zeroing out depending on how they end up writing it off, right? That'd be pretty cool. Okay, so let's see, anything else? Oh, if you got the grant, it's going to be a very similar account. So if you got the disaster relief, then it would go under other income. And then this is going to be your EIDL grant or whatever you got, funds. You can, funding, and then save and close it. If you know it's 100% a grant right now, then you could deposit the money that you received directly to that account. Okay, so if it went into your regular bank account, you could put SBA like where you received it from, and then you come down here and you would pick other income. And if you got $10,000, you got $1,000, like whatever amount you got, 1,000, 10, 5, whatever, or if you receive more, you'd put the amount in on the date that you received it. Okay. So if it's a loan, you can put it as a loan. And then once you know it's been forgiven or how much is forgiven, you could do the same thing that we did with the PPP loan. So it just depends on what this actually totally ends up being. So we could say this was received on like May 14th or something. Okay. And then that would show up on your profit and loss. Just say for this year. And then we'll customize it. And you could put your filters and stuff in there. Or you could choose to just do this month and then through like May or whatever. July. I had the rest of it in July. So you'll see like I have like my expenses and then I have like the different types of funding are going to be down there. You really want to clearly categorize those. Will a copy of this class be sent to our email? Yes, I'll put this up on my YouTube channel. I also streamed it through Facebook, so it'll be there as well, and I'll send it to you guys. How would you clear the PPP loan from the balance sheet? I just showed you. Was that before I showed you how to do it? Who was that asked that question? Anne? So you only be able to remove from the balance sheet. So here, I'll show you what happened. When I put it as income, it will reduce by the amount forgiven. Okay, so down here, let me go through July 31st so I can show you everything I did. Down here, you're gonna have your PPP loan and you're gonna have your original amount. Let me go back. Let me just go to all. You're gonna have your original amount and then what was forgiven is gonna show up on your balance sheet. If all of it's forgiven, then you would do all of it. If only a portion of it's forgiven, a portion. If you owe the money back, I have a separate video on how to write your loan payments. But if you end up having to pay back money and you do it over a 2-year time frame, you'd set up your vendor as the bank you owe the money to or where you're making your payments back to. The amount that you pay, let's say it's $250, then you would break it down between the PPP loan. This is like everything you guys probably will need to know about the loans, I hope. If not, we'll create another video. And then you're gonna have your interest expense for what you have to pay in interest. It's only like 2% or something or whatever it is. So, the dollar amounts will be different, but you'd have who you pay. And this would be if you do have to pay back the loan, you're gonna put it back to the loan. Okay, so we covered how to set up the loan, how to set up your classes, how to deposit the money, how to track it, how to write it off, and then how to make the payments. If you're an online user and you need to set up your accounts in the chart of accounts, you go just to new. And to set up your original loan, it's going to be, I would do it as a long-term liability. And other long-term, you could do note payable. Those don't really matter. And then you do PPP loan. Okay, just so you know, because I feel like I forgot to share you that part. I wouldn't make it a sub-account of anything. I would just leave it. And if you wanted to do like the different kinds of income category, yours is just here, other income. And then I would do it as miscellaneous income. And then I would name it like PPP forgiveness or EIDL. And that's how I'd set it up for the online users. Okay. How did you add classes to import payroll items that you use from a payroll service? I cannot speak to that because I don't import items, but just the same way you normally import them, does it end up going through a journal entry, or how do you import them now, Diane? Lori said, my understanding is if you get the PPP and you get the advance, you have to pay it back. That's very possible. I don't know that anybody's 100% clear on all the facts yet and how the forgiveness is going to work. Nobody really knows because I think there's still a lot of things being figured out. Direct to your checking account. Okay, so if you go direct to your checking account and you're in but how do you enter it in QuickBooks? Are you an online user, a desktop user, Diane? And do you desktop? Okay, so when you go to the bank account, just like you normally enter it, just like you normally enter your expense, however you do that, do you normally do a journal entry or do you normally do it through the check register? Until the loan is forgiven. Yes. So you keep it as a long-term liability till it's forgiven is how I would do it until we have more facts. I wouldn't do it as other income as like a grant until you know that it is. And you have till the end of the year to kind of figure that stuff out, right? You don't have to know it today. Can I show you one more time how to set up the classes on the online? Sure. So to Diane's question, or anybody, if you're like, well, how do I do this for this or that? Whatever you normally do, you're just going to open up that transaction and apply it to the class or apply it to the bank. You know, if you have it outside, you're probably the best way to do it would be class. Okay, so for the online, can I show you again how to set up classes? It's going to be under the wheel. You are going to go under account and settings, advanced, and you're going to go here to the pencil. You're going to check mark that you want to turn on your class. You can choose if you want it on every row or just one row. And then you are going to go to the wheel and you're going to add lists. All lists is the easiest. And then classes, you're going to add a new class, and that is going to be the PPP loan. That's if you're at the level on QuickBooks Online that you can do that, which from what I could tell, you need to be on the plus level for that. You're welcome. She said, thank you for my patience. You're welcome. So this training, you can watch it again in comparison to what you're actually doing. And no matter how much I try to answer every question, there'll probably be some that are like, wait a second, what about this factor? What about that factor? But I think I covered most of them. How do you set up classes? I showed that at the beginning of the video, Daryl. You're going to go into edit preferences, and you're going to go to accounting company and set up the preference. And you guys will have the replay. So if any of you like weren't here when I showed it, you can watch it, you can rewind it, you can go back. We'll also do some timestamps below the video where you can go back and kind of see where we talked about each area. How do you set up a sub account for the chart of accounts for QuickBooks Online for the relief? You mean for the checking account? So anytime you want to create, oops, sorry, wrong account. Anytime you want to create a sub account in your chart of accounts for anything in QuickBooks Online, when you click the new over here, let me show you new, and you go in here, you click right here is where you're going to select your sub account. So if you're adding a new bank account, you could pick your sub account right here, if that's what you're referring to. My employees are working, but not 40 hours. Should I run 2 payrolls, one for the PPP hours and one for their regular hours? I don't think so. Pam, you could talk to your tax professional, but I think you just run one, but you could, I don't know 100% the answer and be very transparent. I don't want to act like I know something I don't. So I don't know 100% the answer to that. You could talk, I would call your CPA or whoever you have that does your taxes. If you don't see the option on doing classes, it's probably because you're not paying for that level of QuickBooks Online. So that's the one thing about QuickBooks Online when people ask me the difference between online and desktop. To be an online user, you have to pay a certain level to be able to get certain features. So if you want to set so somebody asked, how do I set it up as a number when I'm setting up the chart accounts? I don't use numbers because for most businesses that I know, numbers just confuse them. but that would be preferences. Under edit preferences, you can set up the account numbers. And when you have account numbers turned on, up here, right about here, if you can see my mouse, there'll be a place to put the account number, and you can put the account number in there. If what you're referring to is like the loan number, I usually just put it like at the end of the chart of accounts. But if you're talking chart of accounts number, that's different. I'm not sure which one you're referring to based off your question. Okay. Cindy said, can you help my PPP loan entry? Were you here, Cindy, when we talked about how to actually enter your loan into QuickBooks? That was the first thing we covered, like how to enter the loan into QuickBooks. It was deposited into a separate checking account, and I'm going to move the money over to my QuickBooks checking. So when you move it over to your, that's kind of tricky because you didn't put it really in the right. So if it was me, probably if that's like a brand new bank account, Cindy, that you put your funds into, I would probably just add a new bank account into your QuickBooks for the PPP loan funding. That if you put it in like a special account, just add that exact checking account into your QuickBooks. You can have more than one bank account in your QuickBooks file. So I would just go down to account new and then banking, and I'd add that for your funding if that's all that's in that account. Yes. So John asked, can you add classes by row? Yeah. So if you let me get in the right, I have two QuickBooks open. Sometimes it messes me up. Okay. So when you're like writing a check, yes. So on the desktop, you just do like, if you want this class to be PPP, I actually have other classes in my QuickBooks file. I just made them inactive so that they wouldn't be distracting you guys. But let me make this one active. Okay, so if you were in here and you want to say, I want this to go to the PPP loan and I want this to go to this property, you can. But typically you're not going to want to commingle your PPP funds, the check, with other stuff. If it was me, I would write two totally separate checks when it comes to the PPP funds. It's only 8 weeks at a time. Don't try to mix up stuff. That's my recommendation. You're welcome. You're welcome. Let's wrap this up in just a couple minutes because I want to respect all of your time. All of the gross wages during our loan period are to be paid using PPP funds. That's what I thought. Diane said, I'm pretty sure that's how I do it. I wouldn't separate them because the point of the funds, what I would do if you want to separate like their regular hours versus like compensated extra hours for those people, like where you're paying them extra, kind of like to keep them paid full time and you want to track that. If it was me, I would set that up as a separate payroll item probably. And I would set up one as income for like PPP or whatever, you know, like coronavirus funds or something. I don't know. You'd have to set up whatever. You could talk to tax professional what to call it. But if you're wanting to know more like what were the wages for, but as far as the PPP, you want to use everything so you can get it written off. You don't want to separate like their regular plus or bonus because the whole amount of their gross wages you can deduct. You know, that's part of what the funds are for. You can review this on my Facebook page. Yeah, and it'll be on my YouTube channel and on my blog. I'll send an email out with it. How can you use the PPP for classes on a bill if you already are using classes? You can't. So that was one of the disclaimers I said in the very beginning. You can't use classes for the PPP loan if you're already using classes for other things. So then you would want to do the bank account side. That's why I gave you two styles. There's 100 different ways to track it. There is a, let me stop sharing for a second. I want to share a resource with you guys. It's not on my YouTube channel, but I think it's a really great resource. And it's more about being of service than like, oh, you can't watch this, but PPP loan. There's a gentleman that did an Excel spreadsheet that I thought was really cool that helps you like if your employees are over. He has a few different ones, but this is the one that I would recommend to you guys as my community. Can you imagine? Sorry, it's going, it's like started playing automatically, but this is the one. Let me pause it, but let me share my screen again so you guys can see it. It's a really cool, he has a resource that he created for, let me just mute this so that I can play it and get past one spot. Sorry, one second. This is something I would recommend that you check out. For those of you, it's another additional resource. it's all about you guys getting the resources, but this video right here, I'll put it in the chat and we'll add it later. It's a really good, he has like a little video on how to do your funds. Okay, so check that out. Okay, that would be my other, because on this, what I loved about what he created, and I don't want to create it, so I'm like, this is great for my community, just use this. He created where you can get your loan funding and then a little spreadsheet that helps track it, and you can put in like your data for your weeks. So like your gross wages over the period of time, it kind of helps you see, make sure you're not exceeding. And then he's got like your utilities and the different things you can track down here. So it's just another form outside of QuickBooks for you to have additional. I did add the link in the Zoom chat. Oh, you know what? I put it in just my, like to the panelists, which didn't do any good. Okay, there you go. So I'll put in the email too. It's not, I want to give you guys as much resources as I can that can help you. That is definitely, I think, would be a really cool resource. Oh, you got to email him for the password. That I don't know. I honestly didn't download it. I just saw it as a resource for you guys, and I just wanted to make sure I gave it to you. He also teaches QuickBooks, but it's, if he can help you, awesome. Okay, great. Can you attach the link in the email? I will. I will. Yes, I think it's really good. Everybody good? Are we good? No last questions? I didn't even check. I feel bad. I didn't check the Facebook people to make sure. Do you guys feel like you can go out and start applying what we taught you today? What I taught you? Like, are you ready? Let me know. I'm gonna just check. I feel like I should check for all the people who are live on Facebook. I didn't even look. It's easier when you come through the Zoom link because I can see it through the chat. So let's see. I see a few chats. Let me just make sure that I didn't ignore your questions because that's rude. And for those of you who got what you need, thank you for being here. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for being part of my community. I enjoy giving you guys tips and tricks every week. I don't know what next week's going to be yet, but we take your ideas and improve them. I do have one question. You can let me know if you're still here in the chat. Did you enjoy having doing a training live like this for a weekly tip, or do you prefer the pre-recorded? This was a bigger topic, and I want to make sure I didn't miss any of your suggestions. On the EIDL can pay interest, but interest portion is not known at the time of payment. How do you handle that? You're going to have to go back and figure it out later, or you could create an amortization schedule like in Excel or something. Like QuickBooks has a loan amortization, but I usually just use Excel, to be honest, or Google Sheets or something like that. And I'd create like the loan amount with the amount of interest. That's what I do like on my private notes that I personally have. They don't always tell me, or even like loans that you pay, like your traditional mortgage doesn't tell you that. You have to go back in your QuickBooks after the fact when you get the statement to enter it. So you can always go back. You liked it live. Okay, cool. I like pre-recorded. Yeah. The only disadvantage to pre-recorded is I have to think up all your questions ahead of time, and I don't always know what they are. And so for this, I wanted to ask it. I'm thinking about starting to do them on Wednesdays, like doing different trainings on Wednesdays for you a couple times a month, maybe on my Facebook page or like this. Okay. All right, perfect. So the one thing you can look at, Mary, one thing about like, so sometimes people say that to me, they go, you speak so fast, like I couldn't follow. That's why we record it, so you can go back and watch it. And we have everybody at different levels. So for some of you, like you're still learning QuickBooks and you need it taught to you at a slower speed. And some people need it faster. Let me show you a trick real quick if you don't already know this when you're watching the videos. Right down here under the wheel, if you're ever watching my video or anybody else's video and you need it slower, you click on the wheel, you click normal speed, and you can slow it down. So if you do 0.75 or half, you're at half the speed. If you want it sped up, you can go up higher too. So if you're ever watching a video and you need it done slower, you can do that. But on a live video, we have to keep a certain level of pace. Otherwise, for some people, it's too slow. And I know we had a lot to cover and I wanted to keep it under an hour the best I could. I love your feedback though on giving you'd prefer like a certain speed. It's great. Yeah, go back and watch. Where will you find your recording? You'll find it on my YouTube channel. It'll be at the top. We'll add it later today. Okay, I'll email you the link when it's available. It takes a little bit for it to process. Okay, I am trying to click on for some reason, I can't get my Facebook to, it's being temperamental. I can't tell what the questions are. I feel bad. Let me see what the questions are. I feel like I should check. Okay. Just got will show how to apply payroll. Yes. I don't understand what class is for. That was at some point. So class, the difference between class and the check, the bank account, is class allows you to pull a profit and loss and organize it so you can simply and easily look at it. That's the benefit of using classes. Whether you use them for rental properties, which is what we traditionally use them more for, or if you have multiple locations, you can see like one column. And by using that for the PPP, it tracks everything in one column, where the rest of your business expenses are going to be over under unclassified. So it will clearly define just the PPP loan. I love watching the training live. Yay! I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Okay, that's it. We're out of here. Have an amazing day. Thank you for being here. I will see you again next week. I will see you again next week on somewhere, wherever, in the email at least, and I'll be emailing you before with the replay. Okay, remember that today's thought of the day was the life loves me. I started to say you, but me, you really. Life loves us all. Look at the mirror and say, and breathe in and say, life loves me. As you breathe out, smile and repeat 10 times. This is the thing. We're all going through stuff we've never really experienced before. Adding a little bit of stress to our lives. Remember to be patient with yourself. Remember, you're amazing. If you haven't seen, I saw this really beautiful card recently, which I shared, which was really like, you're amazing as you are. And remember to treat yourself as lovingly as you treat others. Okay. Have a great day. I'll see you soon. Thank you for being here. Thank you for trusting me. We will get you the replay. Have an amazing day. See you soon.